I told her, if you go on that trip with him, I'm out. She laughed, packed her bikinis, and left for 3 days with her college boyfriend. When she got back and saw him move into her place, she started trembling. But discovering the truth about her perfect vacation would destroy her completely. My name is Dalton Kessler. I'm 49 years old, and I've been working as an aircraft mechanic at Denver International for the past 15 years. Good job, steady pay, the kind of work that keeps planes in the air and families safe. I thought I had a good marriage too, until the morning my wife Pandora decided to test just how much a man could take. She came downstairs that Tuesday morning holding 2 swimsuits like they were evidence in a trial. One was red and conservative. The other was barely enough fabric to cover a postage stamp. Her dark hair was already styled, makeup perfect, and she had that look in her eyes, the one that said she was about to start something. Which one makes me look more free? Pandora asked, holding up the tiny black bikini. I didn't ask who she wanted to look free for. We both knew. Dory, I said, using the nickname I called her for 22 years. You planning on swimming or putting on a show? She laughed, but it wasn't a laugh I fell in love with back in college. This was sharper, calculated. Oh, come on, Dalton. Donovan and I are just going to catch up. It's been years since we've talked properly. Donovan Pike, her college boyfriend who'd been sliding back in her life like oil through an engine seal. I'd watch her light up every time his name appeared on her phone. Watched her start buying new clothes, new perfume, start talking about finding herself at 46. I set down my coffee mug and looked her straight in the eye. If you go on that trip with him, I'm out. The words came out steady, no shouting, no drama. Just a simple statement of fact, the way I'd tell her the weather forecast. Pandora froze for maybe 3 seconds. Then that smirk spread across her face. You're not serious, Dalton. You don't do ultimatums. You're Mr. Steady, remember? Mr. Fix Everything quietly. I nodded slowly. Exactly. Which is why you should listen. She shook her head, already turning away. I need this trip, Dalton. I need to remember who I was before I became just this. She gestured around our kitchen, our home, our life. And what am I supposed to be while you're remembering? I asked. You'll be here, she said, not even looking back. You always are. That's when I realized she didn't just take me for granted. She'd forgotten I was capable of leaving it all. 22 years of being the steady one, the reliable one, the one who fixed problems instead of creating them. She'd mistaken my patience for weakness. I watched her pack that afternoon, singing along to music that was too young for her, posting cryptic messages on social media about new adventures. She kissed my cheek on her way out the door, like she was heading to the grocery store. Don't wait up too late while I'm gone, Pandora called over her shoulder. You've got your tools and your sports center, right? I didn't answer. I just stood at the window and watched her Uber disappear down our street, carrying my wife toward another man and away from everything we'd built together. That's when I walked to my workshop and opened the drawer I'd hoped I'd never need. Inside was an envelope marked Plan D in my own handwriting. Sometimes the quietest men make the loudest moves. 3 hours after Pandora's plane took off, I was sitting in my truck outside Morrison & Associates law firm. The envelope in my passenger seat had been waiting 6 months for this exact moment. Some men wait until the house is burning to look for the fire extinguisher. Smart men keep one ready. Inside that envelope was everything. Property transfers, trust restructuring documents, lease agreements. All perfectly legal, all perfectly final. I learned a long time ago that preparation beats panic every single time. My phone buzzed. A text from my niece Rachel. Uncle Dalton, is it time? I typed back. It's time. You ready? Anna's already on her way. Keys. Kitchen counter. Spare bedroom. You know what to do. Rachel had been my backup plan for months. 25 years old, sharp as a tack, and she'd never liked how Pandora treated me. When I'd asked her to help coordinate this weekend, she'd simply asked, "What took you so long?" The lawyer's office was exactly what I expected: dark wood, heavy books, the smell of expensive decisions. Morrison himself was a thin man with gray hair and the kind of handshake that said he'd seen every kind of human disaster. "Mr. Kessler," he said, settling behind his desk. "You're certain about this course of action?" I handed him the envelope. "Every page is signed, witnessed, and notarized. I just need you to file them with the appropriate offices." Morrison opened the documents, scanning each page with practiced eyes. The property transfer moved our house from joint ownership to a trust I'd established years ago. The lease agreement put Cordelia Cross, a woman I'd met through Rachel's college connections, into our home as a legal tenant. Everything had been planned down to the last detail. "This is comprehensive," Morrison said. "Your wife will have no legal recourse." "None," I replied. "She signed off on the trust structure in 2019 when we were doing estate planning. Said she didn't need to read the fine print because she trusted me." I almost smiled at that. Turns out that trust goes both ways. Morrison nodded slowly. "The filing fees will be processed by Monday morning. By the time she returns from her trip, these will be in effect." I stood and shook his hand. "Appreciate your discretion." "Of course. Though I have to ask, what if she comes back early?" I headed for the door. "She won't. She's having too much fun posting pictures of her freedom." Outside, I checked my phone. Sure enough, there was Pandora's latest Instagram post. A selfie in the airport with the caption, "Adventure awaits." She had no idea that while she was chasing her past, I was busy erasing her future. 24 years of marriage had taught me one thing. Pandora always underestimated the quiet ones. Today, that mistake was going to cost her everything. I drove home to an empty house, but for the first time in months, it felt peaceful. Saturday morning brought the first photos. Pandora had always been addicted to social media, but this weekend she was posting like her life depended on it. Each picture was carefully staged to show me exactly what I was missing. The first one showed her in a bright red bikini by some resort pool, drink in hand, caption reading, "Finally living MY life." I studied the image like I would a damaged aircraft part, methodically, looking for details others might miss. That's when I saw it. In the reflection of her oversized sunglasses, barely visible unless you knew what to look for, was a table setting for 3. Not 2. 3 wine glasses, 3 plates, and a man's hand that definitely wasn't Donovan's. Donovan wore a cheap digital watch with a split screen. This hand wore a gold Rolex, and the skin looked older, more weathered. Someone else was bankrolling this little vacation, someone Pandora hadn't mentioned. I screenshotted the image and zoomed in until the pixels started to break apart. There, in the corner of that reflected table, was a bottle I recognized, Opus 1 Cabernet. $800 a bottle. Donovan Pike was a personal trainer who drove a 10-year-old Honda. He wasn't buying wine that cost more than his monthly car payment. My phone rang. "Rachel, Uncle Dalton, you need to see this. I'm sending you a link." The link led to the resort's website, specifically their restaurant section. The terrace at sunset, exclusive dining, reservation only, dress code required. I called the resort directly. "Terrace reservations. This is Miguel speaking. Hi, I'm trying to reach my wife. She's dining there tonight. Pandora Kessler." "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have anyone by that name on tonight's reservation list. Maybe she's under her maiden name? Pandora Voss." "No, sir, no Voss either. How about the gentleman she's with? Donovan Pike." "No Pike reservation, sir." I hung up, my jaw tight. She wasn't just cheating. She was being bankrolled by someone with serious money, someone who could afford to wine and dine my wife while keeping his name off the reservation books. That's when the second photo came through. Pandora at the beach, but this time the background told a different story. The resort logo on the umbrellas wasn't from the place she told Donovan they were staying. This was the Ritz-Carlton, not the Holiday Inn she'd mentioned. Someone was paying premium prices for my wife's infidelity, and they wanted to stay anonymous. 24 years of marriage, and I'd never seen Pandora at the Ritz-Carlton level. Whoever this third party was, he had deep pockets and shallow morals. I forwarded everything to Morrison with a single text. "Accelerate the timeline. File everything Monday morning, first thing. Some discoveries change everything." This one just confirmed I was doing the right thing. Sunday evening, Cordelia Cross knocked on my front door, carrying a single suitcase, and wearing the kind of calm confidence that comes from surviving life's worst surprises. At 54, she was elegant without trying to be young, smart without needing to prove it. "Mr. Kessler," she said, offering a firm handshake. "Thank you for this opportunity." Rachel had found Cordelia through her network at the university. Former real estate executive, recently widowed, no drama or baggage. She needed a quiet place to start over, and I needed someone who could handle whatever Pandora threw at the situation. "Call me Dalton," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "Welcome home." Cordelia walked through the house like she was conducting an inspection, not judging, but assessing. In the kitchen, she ran her fingers along the granite countertops Pandora had insisted on, but never maintained. In the living room, she straightened the throw pillows that had been scattered carelessly for months. "Your wife has interesting taste," Cordelia said diplomatically. "Had," I corrected. Past tense. She nodded, understanding immediately. "The lease agreement Rachel showed me is quite thorough. 6 months minimum, utilities included, first month paid in advance." "That's right." "And Cordelia?" I handed her the house keys. "Whatever happens when she gets back, you don't negotiate with her. This is your home now. I'll handle any drama." Cordelia smiled, and for the first time in months, I remembered what it felt like to be around a woman who didn't need constant entertainment. "I've been through a divorce, Dalton. I know how these things work. Women like your wife think they can intimidate other women into backing down. And they've never met someone like me." That evening, I helped Cordelia settle into the master bedroom. She'd brought her own sheets, her own artwork, even her own coffee maker. By the time we finished, the room looked nothing like the space Pandora had left. "One question," Cordelia said as I headed for the guest room. "Why are you being so generous to a stranger?" I paused in the doorway. "Because you're not the one who broke our marriage vows. And because every man deserves to come home to someone who actually wants to be there." Cordelia's expression softened. "She has no idea what she's throwing away, does she?" "No," I said. "But she's about to find out." Monday morning, Morrison called with confirmation. Every document was filed. Every legal protection was in place. Pandora's flight landed at 3:47 p.m. I'd be at work when she got home, doing what I always did, keeping planes in the air while everything else fell apart around me. The difference was, this time I wasn't falling with it. Tuesday afternoon, I was under the hood of a Boeing 737 when my phone started buzzing like an angry wasp. 6 missed calls from Pandora, 3 voicemails, and a string of texts that went from confused to angry to desperate in the span of 20 minutes. The first text: "Why won't the garage open? Did you change the code?" Then, "Dalton, this isn't funny. I'm tired and I just want to come home. Finally, call me back right now." I didn't. I had a hydraulic system to inspect, and frankly, watching her panic from a distance was more satisfying than I'd expected. Around 4 o'clock, Rachel called. "Uncle Dalton, you need to know what just happened. Your wife showed up at the house, and she couldn't get in. Spent 20 minutes trying different codes, checking windows, even tried the hidden key spot. When that didn't work, she rang the doorbell." I could picture it. Pandora standing on her own front porch like a stranger, probably still wearing those oversized sunglasses and vacation clothes, expecting the house to welcome her back like nothing had changed. Cordelia answered the door. Rachel continued. Very polite, very professional. Told Pandora that she needed to speak with the property manager about any access issues. Property manager? That would be me, apparently. Cordelia gave her my number. I had to smile. Cordelia was handling this exactly right. Cool, legal, unshakable. What did Pandora do? Started shouting about how it was her house and demanding to know who Cordelia was. Cordelia just said she was the current tenant and closed the door. And then Pandora called me, screaming about lawyers and theft and how you couldn't just lock her out of her own house. I told her everything was perfectly legal and that she should have read what she signed. By 5:30, the calls from Pandora had stopped. Instead, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Richard Blackstone, Mrs. Kessler's attorney. We need to discuss this situation immediately. I forwarded the message to Morrison with a note. Game time. Morrison called back within minutes. Dalton, I've spoken with this Blackstone character. He's threatening all kinds of legal action, but he's shooting blanks. Everything we filed is ironclad. What did you tell him? That his client signed away her rights to the property in 2019, and that her abandonment of the residence triggered the trust restructuring clause. He started quoting community property law until I reminded him that the house was never community property. It was always held in trust. That night, I drove past the house on my way home from work. My house, where I'd lived for 15 years, where I'd built a workshop and planted trees and fixed everything that broke. Now it had warm lights in the windows and someone inside who actually wanted to be there. Pandora's car was parked across the street. She was sitting behind the wheel, staring at the house like she could will the locks to change back. I pulled into the driveway of my rental apartment 2 blocks away. Tomorrow, Pandora would start to understand that some decisions can't be undone. And honestly, I was sleeping better than I had in months. Wednesday morning brought the nuclear option. Pandora hired Richard Blackstone, the kind of lawyer who advertised on bus benches and promised to fight for your rights. His office smelled like cheap cologne and desperation. Morrison had warned me this would happen. Dalton, men like Blackstone make their money on intimidation and bluster. When that doesn't work, they usually fold pretty quickly. The phone call came at 7 a.m. while I was getting ready for work. Mr. Kessler, this is Richard Blackstone representing your wife. I'm calling to inform you that you have 24 hours to restore Mrs. Kessler's access to the marital home, or we'll be filing for emergency relief. I've been expecting this. Mr. Blackstone, you might want to check the property records before you file anything. That house hasn't been marital property since 2019. Sir, I don't care what paperwork tricks you think you've pulled. Arizona is a community property state, and the house is held in an irrevocable trust that your client willingly signed into. I interrupted. A trust that she triggered by abandoning the residence for more than 48 hours without notice. Silence. Then, we'll see about that. 2 hours later, Morrison called me at work. Blackstone filed his emergency motion. The judge took one look at our documentation and dismissed it without a hearing. Told Blackstone he should have done his homework before wasting the court's time. What's next? Now, they'll probably try to claim fraud or duress, anything to invalidate the trust documents. But they can't. Pandora signed everything in front of witnesses, had independent legal counsel present, and waited the required 7-day review period. That afternoon, I got a call from Cordelia. Dalton, your wife showed up again, this time with a locksmith. What happened? I called the police, showed them my lease agreement, and my ID showing this as my legal address. The officers explained to Mrs. Kessler that what she was attempting constituted breaking and entering. How did she take that? Not well. She started screaming about how I was some kind of homewrecker, how you couldn't just replace her with a stranger. The officers weren't impressed. That evening, Rachel forwarded me a Facebook post from Pandora. When someone you trusted for 24 years destroys your life while you're trying to find yourself. Some people are not who you think they are. #betrayed, #heartbroken, #homeless. The comments were brutal. Her sister, actions have consequences, Pandora. Her best friend from college, girl, you made your bed. Even her yoga instructor, maybe use this time for self-reflection. I closed the app and leaned back in my chair. Pandora had spent years building a social media image of the perfect wife and mother. Now that facade was collapsing, and everyone could see the truth underneath. My phone buzzed with one last text from her. Please, Dalton, can we just talk? I made a mistake, but this is too much. For the first time since this started, I replied. You didn't make a mistake, Pandora. You made a choice. Now live with it. Then I blocked her number. Some bridges deserve to be burned. Thursday evening, I was having dinner with Cordelia when Pandora finally worked up the courage for a direct confrontation. We were sitting at the kitchen table, my kitchen table, in my house, sharing a meal that Cordelia had actually cooked from scratch when the doorbell rang. I'll get it, Cordelia said calmly, wiping her hands on the napkin. You sure? It's probably. I know exactly who it is, Cordelia replied, standing up. And it's time we had a proper introduction. I heard the front door open, then Pandora's voice, shrill and demanding. Who the hell are you? And what are you doing in my house? Cordelia's response was measured, professional. I'm Cordelia Cross. I live here. And you are. I'm Pandora Kessler, and this is MY House. I'm afraid there's been some confusion, Cordelia said. This residence is currently leased to me through a legal agreement. Perhaps you should speak with the property management company. I walked to the living room doorway, staying back but close enough to intervene if needed. Pandora was standing on the porch in designer clothes that screamed, expensive vacation. Her face flushed with anger and disbelief. Dalton, she shouted when she saw me. Tell this woman to get out of our house. It's not our house anymore, Pandora, I said quietly. You made sure of that when you chose your weekend with Donovan over 24 years of marriage. I made a mistake. People make mistakes, Dalton. No, I replied, stepping beside Cordelia. Mistakes are when you forget to pick up milk. What you did was make a calculated decision to throw away everything we built together. Pandora's eyes darted between us, and I could see the moment she realized what she was looking at. Cordelia and I weren't just landlord and tenant. We were comfortable together, natural, the way couples look after they've found their rhythm. You're sleeping with her, Pandora whispered, her voice breaking. Cordelia spoke before I could answer. Where I sleep is none of your concern. What should concern you is that you're trespassing on private property. Trespassing? This is insane. Dalton, you can't replace me with some stranger. I didn't replace you, I said. You left. I moved on. Pandora started crying then, the ugly kind of crying that comes when someone realizes they've lost something they can't get back. Please, she begged. I'll end things with Donovan. I'll come home. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. I looked at her standing there in her vacation clothes, jewelry I'd never seen before, probably paid for by her mystery benefactor. She looked desperate and lost, and completely foreign to me. Pandora, I said gently, there's nothing left to fix. You broke it beyond repair. Cordelia stepped forward. Mrs. Kessler, I think it's time for you to leave. If you have legal concerns, please have your attorney contact the appropriate parties. Pandora looked between us one more time, then turned and walked away. I watched her get in her car, a rental, I noticed, since she'd apparently left her own car at the airport. Well, Cordelia said, closing the door, that went better than I expected. Better. She smiled. She could have thrown a rock through the window. We returned to our dinner, but something had shifted. The confrontation was over, and Pandora finally understood that her old life was gone forever. Friday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Morrison, my lawyer, with news that changed everything. Dalton, you're going to want to sit down for this. My investigator finished digging into your wife's activities, and it's worse than we thought. I was in my workshop at the airport, surrounded by the organized chaos of aircraft parts and diagnostic equipment. The familiar smell of hydraulic fluid and metal somehow made the news easier to take. How much worse? The man in those resort photos? It's not just some random rich guy. It's Vincent Castellano, owner of Castellano Construction. He's married, has 3 kids, and he's been under federal investigation for bid rigging and tax evasion. I set down my wrench. Federal investigation? Gets better. Your wife's been depositing cash into a separate account for 6 months. $25,000 so far, all in amounts just under the federal reporting requirement. The pieces started falling into place. Pandora's sudden interest in girls' nights out. Her new jewelry, new clothes, expensive tastes she'd never had before. She hadn't just been cheating, she'd been getting paid for it. Morrison, what does this mean legally? It means your wife might be an accessory to money laundering. And it means when the FBI comes calling, and they will, you want to be as far away from this mess as possible. That afternoon, I called Cordelia at the house. Cordelia, we need to talk tonight. Something's come up. How serious? Federal investigation serious. When I got home that evening, Cordelia was waiting with coffee and a concerned expression. Tell me, she said simply. I explained everything. Vincent Castellano, the money, the federal investigation. Cordelia listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each detail. Dalton, she said when I finished, you realize what this means? That my wife is in serious trouble. That you could be in serious trouble. Spouses can be held liable for each other's financial crimes, especially if there's any question about what you knew and when. I hadn't thought of that. What do you recommend? Complete documentation of everything. Bank records, credit card statements, anything that shows you had no knowledge of these transactions. And you need to report this to the authorities before they find out on their own. That night, I lay awake thinking about the woman I'd married 24 years ago. The college student who'd been smart and funny and honest. How had she become someone who took money from married men under federal investigation? Saturday morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first to Morrison, authorizing him to cooperate fully with any federal investigation. The second to the FBI field office in Denver. Special Agent Rodriguez speaking. Agent Rodriguez, my name is Dalton Kessler. I have information about Vincent Castellano that I think you need to hear. Some marriages end with arguments or lawyers or tears. Mine was ending with federal agents and money laundering charges. But at least it was ending honestly, which is more than I could say for how it had been lived. 3 weeks later, Special Agent Rodriguez called with an update that made everything crystal clear. Mr. Kessler, we've arrested Vincent Castellano and 3 associates on federal charges. Your wife's name came up during questioning. I was at home with Cordelia, enjoying a quiet Sunday morning that had become our routine. Coffee, newspaper, actual conversation instead of complaints and demands. What kind of charges? I asked. Money laundering, tax evasion, bribery of public officials. Castellano's been paying bribes to city council members to secure construction contracts. Your wife was apparently one of his intermediaries. Cordelia looked up from her crossword puzzle, concern in her eyes. Agent Rodriguez, what does this mean for Pandora? She's looking at federal charges as an accessory. We found records of payments totaling over $40,000, all routed through her personal accounts. She claims she didn't know what the money was for, but the evidence suggests otherwise. That afternoon, Rachel called with news from Pandora's side of the family. Uncle Dalton, Aunt Pandora's been arrested. They took her from her sister's house this morning. How's she handling it? Not well. She's demanding to speak with you, saying you're the only one who can help her. I looked at Cordelia, who was listening to my side of the conversation. She gave me a slight shake of her head. Rachel, tell her to speak with her attorney. I can't help her with this. She doesn't have an attorney anymore. Blackstone dropped her when the federal charges came up. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the background noise of a jail phone system. Dalton. Pandora's voice was small, broken. Please don't hang up. What do you want, Pandora? I need help. I need a lawyer. I need bail money. I never meant for any of this to happen. What did you think was going to happen when you started taking money from a man under federal investigation? I didn't know. Vincent never told me about any investigation. He said it was just payment for companionship. Payment for companionship. I repeated the word slowly. Pandora, do you realize what you're describing? Silence. Then quiet crying. I need money for a lawyer, she whispered. I can't help you with that. You're my husband. You have to help me. Ex-husband. As of yesterday. The divorce was finalized while you were being arrested. The line went quiet except for her breathing. Dalton, please. I know I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you. Pandora, I said gently. You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed 24 years of trust for money from a criminal. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. What am I supposed to do? That's not my problem anymore. But I'll give you some free advice. Tell the truth to whoever will listen. It's the only chance you have. I hung up and turned off the phone. Cordelia reached over and took my hand. You did the right thing. Did I? Yes. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, covering everything in clean white silence. 6 months later, I was standing in the backyard of my house, truly my house now, watching Cordelia plant roses where Pandora's neglected vegetable garden used to be. The contrast was striking. Careful planting instead of impulsive planting, beauty that would last instead of projects abandoned after a few weeks. Hand me that watering can, Cordelia asked, brushing soil from her gloves. I passed it to her, marveling at how natural this felt. Cordelia didn't need constant entertainment or validation. She found joy in simple things, a good book, a home-cooked meal, watching planes take off from our back porch in the evening. Any word from the trial? She asked. Morrison called this morning. Pandora took a plea deal. 3 years federal prison, full restitution to the government. Cordelia nodded without looking up from her roses. How do you feel about that? Honestly, relieved. It's finally over. The doorbell rang, and I found Rachel on the front porch with David Porter, Cordelia's son, and, as of last month, Rachel's fiancé. Their relationship had grown naturally from helping with the house transition, and watching them together reminded me what real partnership looked like. Uncle Dalton, Rachel said, hugging me. We have news. Good news, I hope. David grinned. We set a date. June 15th, here in the backyard if that's okay with you and Mom. Cordelia appeared beside me, dirt still on her hands, but smiling wider than I'd seen since her husband passed. A garden wedding, she said. I love it. That evening, the 4 of us sat on the back porch watching planes descend toward the airport. The same view I'd had for 15 years, but everything else had changed. Instead of complaints about noise and air quality, we talked about travel plans and wedding details and Cordelia's idea to turn the spare bedroom into a home office. Dalton, David said, I want to thank you for everything you've done for my mother. After Dad died, she didn't think she'd ever feel at home anywhere again. She saved me too, I replied, taking Cordelia's hand. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a man is learning he's stronger than he thought. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, I wondered if it was Pandora calling from prison. Instead, it was from Donovan Pike. Heard about Pandora. Sorry, man. Hope you're doing okay. I showed the message to Cordelia, who raised an eyebrow. Are you going to respond? Nope, I said, deleting the text. That chapter's closed. As the sun set behind the mountains, I realized I'd learned something important about marriage. It's not about finding someone who won't leave you. It's about building something worth staying for with someone who wants to be there. Pandora had left because she thought the grass was greener somewhere else. She discovered it was just artificial turf, expensive and fake. Cordelia had chosen to stay because she understood that real happiness comes from building something real with someone who values what you're building together. At 49, I was starting over. And for the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be.